The Big Ten has a new commissioner in Tony Petitti, and it follows a trend, Zach, in which conferences are going away from athletic administrative types to television network types. The Big Ten kind of started that with Kevin Warren. That didn't go well, but this is a little different. Tony Petitti was really heavily involved in things like the BCS. It just has nothing but great things said about him from his time at CBS, at ABC. It seems like a good hire, but you still have to wonder, okay, who's going to handle the actual administrative part of governing college athletics, not just the TV rights portion of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is worth saying, and I'm not. What is the word I'm looking for? I'm not here to defend Kevin Warren. I do think if Kevin Warren sat down and laid out his KPIs, pre-hire, I think he'd probably feel he met those. He navigated NIL, he delivered a new TV deal. Whatever role he played in it, he expanded the conference by adding the 2 LA schools. But I think, it's almost sort of like Kevin Warren knocked some stuff off the to-do list that allowed the next guy to step in and have a bit of a cleaner slate. Now, of course, the other thing with Kevin Warren, we couldn't have seen COVID coming, and that obviously affected his tenure. We would all hope and pray there's not another global pandemic around the corner. But I think that what's interesting here is you've got a much more blank slate for the next few years for Tony Petitti because, in fairness to him, Kevin Warren did cross some important things off the list. While he was commissioner, he was not without his faults. He was certainly not without his detractors, but he did kind of knock some important stuff off the list while he was in the job. And so now, to your point about, needing people who are going to run college sports and things like that, well, we're not completely sure what that's going to look like in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years. And so it can be, to borrow a phrase that I heard Fred Glass use more than once, it can be the remit of someone like Tony Petitti to maybe, think some deeper thoughts in a job like that, if you understand what I'm saying, and not feel like there are sort of needs with deadlines, big looming needs in the next 3 to 4 years that he has got to absolutely drill home on before they, flank the conference.
Yeah, you've got Big Ten media. You do have a gigantic Big Ten media rights, I guess, deal that will come up once UCLA and USC are in the league. They just signed one. So how do they navigate that, adding those two conferences into the current media package?
I mean, it'll be fascinating. I think it will. It's also worth saying the media package. The media package also doesn't come completely online in the first year. I think the big piece of it that won't come online until I think year 2 is the CBS agreement, because CBS is basically going to trade out the SEC Saturday afternoon game for a Big Ten game, but the CBS's current agreement with the SEC runs through the coming football season. So the deal won't be fully optimized for schools until 2024, 2025 is my understanding. That's the beginning of it. These things also tend to pay more at the end of deals than the beginning of deals. There tends to be sort of an escalation of cost to the broadcast partner, the idea being the longer you get into the deal, the more you build viewing habits, the more you exploit new markets and yada, yada, yada. And you're adding value for the broadcasters. The deal goes on. The broadcast partner is expecting that the Big Ten will get more valuable as the years go by, as it has for the last 50 years or whatever. And so they'll be paying more at the back end. So there's that piece of it too. We know Kevin Warren did not make USC or UCLA adhere to the same entry agreements as Maryland, Nebraska, and Rutgers. There will be no probationary period where they're only receiving a portion of a full share of the TV revenues. They will be a full, and fully paid member of the Big Ten from day one. But I think where you'll probably see that impact to me unfold more is the back half of the deal once it is fully online and kind of fully optimized, and once we're maybe at a place where we are measuring the value of the Big Ten in a little bit more of kind of a long-term way, for lack of a better word. In part because the other thing is, we're also by that point going to be bleeding into the new playoff format, and we're going to have to renegotiate the whole playoff agreement and figure out who gets what. And, if you want to talk about value to broadcast partners, there may be no bigger value in this Big Ten deal to Fox than getting far enough in bed with, excuse me, that's my watch, than getting, kind of far enough down the line with the Big Ten that Fox gets a seat at the table in the playoff conversation. And so that's maybe not something that's written in an agreement between Fox and the Big Ten, but Fox is, you get closer to renegotiating this current deal. If Fox is a major player in the college football playoff, then Fox and the Big Ten are going to stay even tighter, and there's probably going to be even more money for everybody to spread around. So it's, these can be sort of big thoughts questions. And again, frankly, I think that people like Tony Petitti are going to be in the big thoughts business for the next few years. But it's going to be fascinating to see where it leads them and where we all wind up.
Yeah, because and then I wonder when you're adding programs like UCLA and USC, you're not just adding two programs, you're adding two brands, two big time brands in a big time TV market. I don't know how that's going to impact the setup of the Big Ten, but I wonder if when you add two high profile programs like that, is that going to kind of help continue push down programs like Indiana, Rutgers, maybe even Purdue, if both those teams go into the West? Even though they're getting more money, they don't have a very good football program or history. Is that going to just continue to try to push them down some?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to say. I think that it's, you can, I think first of all, it's worth saying I would be surprised if we still have divisions in, I would be surprised if we still have divisions in the Big Ten in 2025. They're going to keep them next year. That is based around essentially not wanting to rip up the scheduling model, build a new one, and then have to rip that up and build a new one a year later when you get USC and UCLA in the conference. I think it's probably a more exaggerated sort of condition is not the right word. It is a more exaggerated state of the condition that programs like Indiana are in already, which is essentially you're a small fish in your pond, but being in your pond makes you a big fish in the bigger pond, or a bigger fish than you used to be in the bigger pond. And you can kind of see that however you want. Like I can make you an argument that that's good and bad for Indiana, if you understand what I mean. Like, on the one hand, yes, there are some competitive advantages Indiana's really struggled with as the Big Ten has expanded, as Nebraska has joined, as the conference has gone to 14 teams and gotten richer, and suddenly there's so much more money flowing through everyone. On the other hand, if Indiana's not in the Big Ten, Indiana doesn't have the facilities it has right now. It doesn't have the new baseball stadium, softball stadium, volleyball, wrestling complex. It's not able to afford to do all these things. It's probably not able to afford to renovate Assembly Hall. That's paid for by a gift primarily from Cindy Simon Scott. But can Indiana afford to dedicate that gift to one thing if it's got all these other needs that it can't meet without the Big Ten money? So I mean, listen, there's also some ways in which like Big Ten's going to have a hard time keeping the track and field championships out of LA starting in 2025. Like if you just look at, historically, the West Coast schools are going to have something to say in volleyball, and it is going to be fascinating to watch the Big Ten try to compete with two LA-based schools in track and field, two schools with enormous heritage in those sports. Go look at the track and field alumni that UCLA and USC have. Like it's like an Olympic Hall of Fame, frankly. So there's that element of it too, but I think it's really more just an exaggerated example or state of the current condition that Indiana's already in, which is, yes, in some ways it hurts. It's more difficult to be in the Big Ten when everybody's got more money and you're already lower on the totem pole than the Ohio States, the Michigans, the Penn States, et cetera. On the other hand, that provides you so much advantage over all these schools outside the conference that you're competing with, and allows you to meet needs that you never would have been able to meet if you weren't in the SEC or the Big Ten, one of the two. I think it's probably 6 1/2 dozen for Indiana.